Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name's Natalie Byrne and today I'm going to talk about pricing. I have not prepped this video at all. I'm not an expert on this. I'm still figuring it out. I've only been full-time since 2018 and I still get stuck sometimes with this. Every single job I've done is completely different. I'm always asking my friends advice on this, but I feel like I have learned a lot, and I also understand I at the beginning had no idea about all of this stuff, and even though I still don't feel like I know enough and I don't feel like I'm an expert on this at all, I know that this is the kind of video that I really needed, and especially with the AOI pulling back from being able to help with people with this, with being able to help people with their pricing, which is really a big shame because that really helped me at the beginning. I just know that any information on this topic is really needed for people who struggle with this. And I just want to I just want to start by saying, like, I'm still figuring it all out. I'm still learning, but I'm just gonna answer some of the questions that some of you sent me. So yeah, I've got 3 questions here. I'm just gonna go through really as quick as I can, and just try and not let like the fact that I'm still figuring it out like stop me from helping you. So before we get into it, remember that every advice is subjective. Everyone's advice is subjective. Let me just say that again, just so I said it clearly. Like I said, I'm still figuring out. Please don't take what I say as like a fact. I only know what I know from the experiences I've had, from the journey that I've been on, and also the kind of work that I do. Yeah, I might be wrong on some of this stuff, but I think it's really important to talk about money when it comes to creative businesses. It's really important for people not to be undercharging, because it really brings down the rest of the industry. So it's definitely something that if you feel unconfident in, you need to definitely be taking the time to learn about, because yeah, I'm going to leave some really helpful videos down below. Some amazing illustrators have already spoken about this, so they're going to be able to talk about it much more clearly than I am. I just decided 10 minutes ago I was going to do this right here, right now, so because I know that this is the kind of information that people like need urgently. So we're just gonna get into it. I'm gonna probably just keep this as like a series, because I feel like this is an ongoing journey that I'm still figuring it out. So if you have any questions about pricing or money just in general, please just leave them in the comments, and I definitely will get around to them, because I feel like I'm still learning. So every year I feel like money and learning about money is a huge focus of my creative business. So let's get into it. Charlotte 8834 asked, how do I price my work for prints? Do I charge per hour or equivalent? To skill/creative experience. Huge fan. Okay, thank you, that's so sweet. I am really against people charging for experience. I think that it undervalues young people. When it comes to prints, you've got to take into consideration how much the expenses are, so how much it costs to print, what kind of paper or stock you're printing on. You also have to take in consideration the packaging around it, and also your time to pack it, as well as the time it takes to make that art. So for me, I make prints that are like, it takes time to just make that one print, but then I will print it professionally, so I'll have a big stock of prints. So it depends. If you're doing custom things, you're printing things yourself on demand, I think you have to take in consideration every single aspect that includes your time or any kind of expenses regarding it all. At the same time, I think you also have to consider your target audience. So one of the reasons why I put things up on my shop that are relatively cheap is because I personally, what I wanted was to make art that was a lower cost to produce for me, and easier to ship, and so I could do it at a really good value. But you also, I think it's important, I mean, this is probably more advice on the shop in general. I'm sorry if you hear noise in the background. We're just going with it today. Yeah. How do you price your prints? It really just depends on what kind of print you have, what kind of target audience you have. Is your, stuff that is being sold in an art gallery is completely different to like what I do. I think it's really important to always, when it comes to money, feel really good at that price. You never want to feel like you're undervaluing yourself. You always want to be like, yeah, I stand by that price. I feel good with that price. That price makes sense to me. When it comes to pricing with everything, I think it's really important to feel that you feel good in yourself. So I think it's also important when you're pricing your work for prints to have a really good look at what other people are doing. It's good to do, your market research to see how much, to get a good ballpark in terms of like stuff that's in your, I guess, area. Like for example, when you're talking about fashion, stuff on the high street tends to be around a similar price to stuff that is high end. So you want to get a good idea on like the ballpark, like average figure on what's already happening and what's already going on. But you also want to feel good with the amount that you're charging, and for it to make sense to you, what country you're living in terms of like inflation and all of these things. I think it's okay to change your price. So, but whatever price you do put on your prints, you've got to feel good in that moment about it. As you get more, I guess, popular or more well known, you can price things up higher, so you can change things. But it's tough. It's tough for me to like just say a number right then and there, because it totally depends on what kind of work you're doing, what kind of field you're in. Are you going to be doing stuff that's like more higher end or stuff like that? And it depends who you want to buy your work. So take all of that into consideration. But I think a really good starting point with that is to go and do your market research on loads of other artists, even businesses that sell art, so you can get a really good rough idea on like what other people are doing and what sells and what makes sense. This is probably more to do with an online shop, but a good tip for an online shop is to try and have a range of prices. So don't have like everything for £20. You want to have like a range of stuff, so maybe like something that's £1, something that's £5, something that's £10, you know what I mean? So it means that a whole range of people can come to your shop and get something. But then again, if you want to do more high end, you want to have a shop that's more for high end market, I guess, like the art world and like one of a kind prints. This is a world I have no idea about. It's completely different in the art world in terms of like galleries and proper art. So I just like dissed myself and all the other illustrators, but you know what I mean, like just like higher end like art world stuff. Like, is it Sophie T Arch? Her art goes for like so much so much. It's so expensive. So it totally just depends what your world is, what world you want to get into. But I think a good rule of thumb, the way that I structured my business is, I love that I can get students who want a little piece of my art that costs like £1. I love that, and that's when I know that that's the kind of money I've only had in my pocket to spare on art. So totally depends on what you want to do. And I've been talking about this for so long. Okay, next question. Laura Duffy Art. She's an amazing artist. Definitely go check her out. I'll link her actually in the description. She said, licensing. I never know how to price for it. And then the face that's like, oh. Me too, girl. I'm so, it's a minefield out here. So licensing. You want to do a year. Licensing, I guess, maybe we can start with talking about what that is for the people that might not know. Licensing is quantity of time, where it's going. So is it going to be online? Is it going to be printed? Is it going to be on merchandise? And location. So UK, Europe, America, or worldwide. So licensing includes all those three things. Oh, and the price. Most important part. And the price. So 4 things. So a licensing is describing the use of where it's going. So I'm going to put in the description just a really quick way that I write my licensing in an email. It just says, use for illustration on Instagram. This is an example. Instagram with worldwide license, because everything online is worldwide, and a year. That's what I usually work in. So then you also put your price. So the original question, let's just go back to it. Licensing, you never know how to price for work. So all of the things will affect the price. So if you're doing a worldwide thing versus a very local thing, if you're doing but it's tricky because you can also say your price and then it completely depends on the brand. That's another thing that affects the price, is the brand. How big are the brand? How small are the brand? How big is their budget that they have? And so you can say your price, but you'll always, more often than not, enter a negotiating period. I don't know whether that's just me. Please let me know. But I'm always entering in a negotiating period. Maybe it's because creative budgets are getting smaller and smaller, which is not a reason to deter you from being an artist. But it's definitely something that I keep hearing popping up from people that have been doing this for 10 years plus, saying that the budgets are getting smaller and smaller. So the advice that I've been getting on how to price for work will, more often than not, I'll be put into a negotiating period where we kind of go back and forth for a while. So don't be deterred or feel unvalidated if that keeps happening to you, because that keeps happening to me. So usually when that happens, we'll normally negotiate on the deliverables. So if they say, hey, we only have this amount of budget, we really want to work with you, blah, blah, I'll be like, okay, well then maybe we could drop the illustrations down to less, or maybe we could cut the licensing down or negotiate on a contract or blah, blah, blah. So negotiating is such important thing to learn. You can like Google about any kind of negotiating. I feel like that is not answering the question. Anyway, licensing. Laura says, I never know how to price for it. It's tricky because every single job that I get is completely different. So I might be a pro at negotiating for Instagram, but I'll always get another job that will be a completely different way of working. So it's a tricky one that I feel like I will never feel like I know everything about when it comes to licensing. What I will say is you never want to be charging any less than £200 per illustration. Obviously it completely depends on every single project, but that is a really good rule of thumb. Now when I say that, that's like the bare minimum. So if you're working with a huge international global company, your artwork is going to turn into more value from that company because it's going to have more eyes on it, or because it's going to be seen by more people. So the value for that piece of artwork is completely different to whether you're making something for a local business and to a small business, to a business that is completely global with, like, you know, huge. So, and conglomerate, I think that's the word. Never know how to say that word. You get it. So it's that's why I feel like I'm still learning, because every single project I've done has been priced completely different. But you never want to go any less than £200. That's really like the baseline. Anything less, you are being completely taken for a ride. But I would be lying if I said that I hadn't taken on projects for less than that and negotiated on the deliverables, just because they're either a company I really want to work with and they have a small budget, or I need the money. Like, there's no other way of going about it. But don't be deterred from, is deterred even the right word? Don't feel like you're not good enough if you're entering in to that negotiating kind of period, because I feel like that's really normal. Well, that's really normal for me anyway. So she says, I never know how to price for it. The way to get around that is to, like what you're already doing, Laura, reaching out to people. Ow, I have my nail. Did you hear that? It broke. Anyway, the way that I get through it when I don't know how to price is I talk to my friends. Even at the beginning, I reached out to creatives online. There's a bunch of amazing illustrators that answered my questions about licensing, as long as you're being polite and respectful, and also you know, saying, hey, I'd really like your advice on this, but it's completely okay if you don't reply. I get it, because you're very busy. Just be very polite. But a lot of the most amazing illustrators, when I started out my career, answered some of my questions. And now a lot of them are my closest friends. And now they ask me questions about pricing, and like me and all my friends were constantly being like, hey, I got this job, what should I price for it, blah blah blah. I don't feel like that's enough. Is that enough? Do you think that's enough? Is this okay? We're always sharing our knowledge, and like any advice, it's so much easier to give out advice than actually do it yourself. So a lot of the time, I think talking things through with other people and getting other people's perspective on it has been so valuable to me in my career. Just like I've said a million times before, it's really hard for me to get through my DMs, but I will always make time for people who are struggling with pricing. Now, I don't want to be getting 10,000 DMs about pricing, because it's going to make it harder for me to get back. But now, where my YouTube is still fairly small, I am able to answer people's questions on pricing. But hopefully videos like this will make it easier for me to share what I know on like a bigger scale. But yeah, talk things through. That's why it's so important to go out of your way to make creative friendships, so that, you know, we can all help each other in this. And I would always talk about pricing, no matter how small the job is, no matter how confident you feel about pricing for that job. Always, always, always talk to someone, because there has been times where I have definitely underpriced, even still today, and it's because I didn't stop to take time to really think or talk things through with someone. So don't be afraid to get back to people. Like, this is what I always do. Sometimes I'll get a client, they'll be like, can we organise a call? And I'll be like, great, that's cool. And they'll talk about their wonderful, amazing project, and I'll get all excited, and then they'll ask me about pricing, and I'll say, wonderful, I'm so excited, I will get back to you in regards to the price. Don't feel like you have to make it up on the spot. You can take time to think about it and talk things through, and just keep your communication open with your client. Say, hey, this is going to take me 1 or 2 days to get back to you. And make sure you have all the information you need. like I said, like, where's it going? How long do they want the license for? What's the target audience? Before you make your price, you need to know all the information, all of it. And so that's why talking things through with a friends can be so helpful, because they might even think of questions you've not even thought of. I've been talking for so long. We've got time for one more question. Daisy Wakefield, she's also an incredible illustrator. I'm going to leave her in the link below as well. I'm going to leave her links below too. She has asked, commissions for charities, relatively big ones who most likely have a budget. So this is hard again. So generally speaking, for speaking gigs that I've done with charities, I will price them lower. Yeah, so I usually price them a little bit lower, but I think it's also important to be like, hey, this is what I was thinking. That's not very professional. You need to say, hey, this is the licensing for this kind of project. List the licensing. I'll leave an example down below. And then say at the end, but if this is outside of your budget, please let me know and I would be happy to discuss this further. So just copy and paste that underneath it. Underneath of every time you price anything, you always want to, I mean, charities, it might be a bit different, but in everything else, you always want to price higher. You read anything about someone asking for promotion online, which there are loads and loads of articles online about people ask how to ask for promotion, people asking for a better salary at work, and they will always say, always put the number higher than what you want and what you're expecting. When you do work that way, which is a lot of what I work at, it can be helpful to add that underneath, to be like, hey, if this is outside your budget, please let me know and we can discuss this further. I think saying it like that, I mean, this is another thing that is so important when pricing. Your language in your emails is really, really, really important. I've had screenshots from friends who are like writing their emails, and I've like adjusted it all, because you've got to, okay, let me just give you an example. So this is how I wouldn't word an email. Well, this is the number I was kind of thinking of. Thank you so much. This is wonderful. I don't know. You know what I mean? Just like a little bit like not feeling confident. And the emails that I write are like, thank you so much for getting in touch. I'm really excited about this project. This is the pricing down below. Let me know if you want to discuss this further. Speak to you soon, or something like that. You want to always, when you're talking about money, I'm going to look at you right now. When you're talking about money, you don't want to be going, well, but, no. I don't care if you're even feeling like that. When I'm writing my emails, I feel like that. I feel like that. But it's so, so important to stand strong, to write with strength when you're talking about money, especially women, because I know that pretty much my whole audience is women. So you want to be writing like you know what you're talking about. Companies, I don't know if this is obviously not every single company. Hashtag not all companies. But if someone can smell the unprofessionality of you, you have more chance to be taken for a ride, which is a hard thing to deal with when you're just starting out. And one of the shitty parts about just starting out is people will try and take an advantage of you. Some of the emails I got right at the beginning of projects that didn't fall through because I thought they were so unprofessional were people bullying me into doing projects for very, very low cost, because they were like, you're just starting out, blah, blah, blah. You know, someone who's young will pay you in, what is it called? Exposure. And just like, you know, being shocked at a price all these things are really unprofessional, and just general rudeness, which can happen sometimes. It's not often, and I've never worked with anyone who has emailed me like that. But one of the things I had to deal with definitely at the beginning were people who were seeing that I didn't have like a huge, vast range of clients and trying to take advantage of that. So it's so important when you're talking about money to be confident, to write with language that, at least for the meantime, will give off the message that you know what you're talking about and you're not an idiot. Which I know I still sometimes feel like an idiot, okay? But it's so important to have language in your emails that show people that just because you're a young artist doesn't mean that you're not a business, because you are a business at the end of the day. And I know that that's the hardest thing, and it's important to talk about, because when you go and study something creative, you don't have a lesson which is, this is how you write an email, this is how you price for work, this is how you stand up against someone who's trying to bully you into doing a low-paid job. This is how you sound like you know what you're talking about. And so do your research on that. Yeah, so Daisy, I'm going to answer your question now. I feel like I just went on a huge ramble. Yeah, for charities, you can definitely price lesser. You can lower your price down a bit. But I think it's also important to say a price and that's probably closer to what you usually would work in, and just be like, hey, if this is outside your budget, let me know, and we can negotiate on the price, considering you're a charity. At the same time, there are huge charities that do have budgets that I have been surprised with, so go for it. If they say that there's a budget for a project, there's a budget for a project, so you might as well just figure out what number feels right for you. Going back to the first question, what number feels right for you, what number you're comfortable in, what number you think you're worth, and work from there. Obviously, when I say work from there, I don't mean like go under yourself, under what you're worth. But when it comes to charities, it's fun to we as creatives also gotta leave a little leg room for charities, I think, as well. So next I'm going to talk about some books that have really helped me. So this is the little back book by Otegha. She also has a podcast that is all about businesses. I'd really recommend it. This is a lovely little book, but it talks a lot about pricing in it, and even though she isn't an illustrator, I still think it's really hard as women for us to get comfortable talking about pricing, and I think she does a really great job at talking about and covering that in here, so that you can arm yourself with the knowledge and confidence to understand that a lot of why we feel uncomfortable talking about money as women is because we undervalue ourselves, because that's what society makes us believe. Second book, really great book. Let me just read the cover. The Illustrator's Guide to Law and Business. There's an updated version of this now. I'd really recommend getting this book. And it's by the AOI. So I'd also recommend them, if you're an illustrator, to sign up for them. They have loads of resources about businesses and how to make money, and how to price. They constantly always put new stuff on their website, and so I'd really recommend it. It's about £14, I think, a month. I'm a member. They have a lot of stuff about pricing on their website and contracts and loads of stuff. So I'd also recommend them. But this book is beautiful. I've got more books to recommend. If that's not reversed, I'm going to leave that now so that you can screenshot it and find more books about pricing. Here's an example of how you'd write your license. Sorry about my nails, they're an absolute mess. So I'll leave it here so you can screenshot that. But yeah, this book is really great, and I'll leave the link of it down below. If you have any other questions regarding money and running a creative business, get in touch and I'll save them for my next video, because I feel like we just need to have more conversations when it comes to money, especially as women, especially as creatives. So yeah, I feel like it's not just talking about a price, like it's not just like a number with zeros on it. We're talking about so much more stuff than that. We're talking about confidence, we're talking about feeling valued, we're also talking about emails and how to structure great emails. So it's don't feel bad if you feel overwhelmed when it comes to the topic of pricing, because it encompasses so much, and I'm still learning, and I think you'd be really surprised to hear some of the stuff that goes on in my WhatsApp groups when we're talking about money, especially artists who are very you know, have huge followings, have huge clients on their name. You'd be surprised, I think, that this is an ongoing journey, but you can totally do it. I believe in you, and if you have any other questions, I'm always here. So I'm gonna go, but it was wonderful to talk about this, and I'm glad that I did it. So yeah, I'm sending big love to all of you, and stay safe, do the work, and I'll see you next week. Bye.